Now we'll look at more of the natural positions of emphasis in the different parts of your writing. And this information I get from George Gopen, head of the writing program at Duke University, when he talked to us. If you really want to dig deep into this, you can Google the article, The Science of Scientific Writing. The Science of Scientific Writing, what you're going to hear in the next 10, 15 minutes, quick summary, especially as it applies to the sentence, but that article would pop up pretty quick. Gopen and Swan, George Gopen, Judith Swan. We talked about how you want to forward, ideally, a single interpretation that's available to the reader the first time through. Gopen says that's theoretically impossible. He says the best an author can do is make available to the reader the interpretation that the author wants the reader to get. He says that 85% of the misunderstanding between the writer and the reader is due to structural issues, and only 15% due to contextual issues. Again, that's why we're going to emphasize structure. So, again, coming from an editorial perspective, we're going to look at the structure of the sentence and the paragraph and the report of original research as a means to identify the natural position of emphasis so that you can take advantage of that and be a more effective writer. And we'll do an exercise in that direction as well. So let's start with the sentence then. You remember a sentence got a subject and a verb, starts with a capital and ends with a period. And my $10 question is, when do you know to put the period? When you run out of breath? No, that's not the answer. I mean, dictation is a great way to get a first draft going, but what does a period tell the reader of a sentence? It's called an end stop as well, right? So you've come to the end of what? A thought. I want to emphasize the word a thought. Especially when we're talking about more complex writing, such as scientific writing can be, the idea, the thing I have to remind people of, even though we learned this back in whatever, second grade, is the guideline for the sentence is one idea per sentence. When you're in your free writing brainstorming mode, do you worry about this? No, just keep on getting that stuff out. But later as you turn into your editing mode, you want to make sure that you have manageable sentences. Sentences that have essentially one idea and not 3 or 4 ideas in them. In fact, one of the more common edits I make here at the University of Iowa is take sentences with 1, 2, maybe 3 ideas and to break them out into their individual units. If you think about that guideline at 1 idea per sentence, and if an author were to put 1, 2, 3 ideas in one long string of words, then what's the overall effect on each of those individual ideas? They get diluted a little bit, right? They get lost. So for me to say this in the affirmative, it would be to say, give each of your ideas the format it deserves. Okay, so again, now we're shifting into more of that editing, that revising mode. 1 idea per sentence. Okay, so now we'll do the exercise that Gopen did with my small group back in New Haven in, 1995 or so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a sentence, and I'm going to ask you to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down as to whether you agree to undergo this theoretical treatment. Okay? So thumbs up or thumbs down. Although the treatment is highly effective, it has significant side effects. Okay, erase your votes. I'm going to give you another sentence, and you do the same thing, thumbs up or thumbs down. Although the treatment has significant side effects, it is highly effective. Okay, so do you find yourself voting 2 different ways? Exact same words, but we just shifted the organization. Now, we're not yet talking about the subtlety yet here. There was one word in those sentences that essentially taught you how to think about the issue, taught you how to vote. What word was it? the although, right? In both those cases, the although, we English teachers call this a subordinator. The although was a cue to the reader that whatever was in the although part, the although phrase, was subordinate or less important than what was in the main clause. So when the side effects was subordinated and the effectiveness was in the main clause, you're more likely to say yes. To examine the subtlety, what we'll do is we'll take the although out, and I'll ask you to vote one more time. The treatment is highly effective, but it has significant side effects. So I'm seeing like maybe 2, 3 votes, 4 votes. A lot harder to tell, my whole point is. And even the word but throws a little interpretation in there. So let's make it more difficult. We'll take the but out as well. The treatment is highly effective and it has significant side effects. Oh good, I get both, right? So the question is, where we don't have a feature embedded in the language, like the word although, a subordinator, the main question that we have to deal with is, where is the natural position of emphasis in the sentence? Does it occur in the first half of the sentence, or does it occur in the second half of the sentence? I heard second half, and that's right. I guessed first half, but that may be because I studied poetry and we capitalized that first letter. Gopin makes a strong point for how in American English, the natural position of emphasis, what he calls the stress position, is the second half of the sentence. And thinking about that, let me organize the sentence for you, as Gopin did for us. And I think you'll be able to see the logic in it. He says in the subject position, or what he calls the topic position of the sentence, subject, in the subject position, it makes sense that one would put the old, backward-looking information that's familiar to the reader, information the reader expects. And in the verb position, you've been taught to use action verbs, and by all means do so wherever possible, but you're not going to get away from linking verbs, forms of to be. They're perfectly appropriate too. They're like equal signs. And then it makes sense that in the natural position of emphasis, you would put the new information, the information that is more important, the information that you want to emphasize. My analogy for the sentence in the body of a paper is that it's like a step you would take on a hike. You want to take a step on a hike, first you have to have some familiar territory, some footing. I see this as the subject position. The verb obviously is the action, kicking out your leg and firing your muscles. And then the new territory you come across, where your weight comes down, I see this as the position of emphasis. Why is the second half of the sentence the natural position of emphasis? According to Gopin, it's because it is the last information left with the reader. It is the moment of closure of the sentence. And this is where it starts to get foofy, because Americans are looking for closure. Let me give you an example. This comes from a grant application I read actually before I had had this session with Gopin. I was reading this application to edit it, and the music was a little off to my ear. And the sentence read, "Development of an animal model for lightning injury is the goal of this proposal." And I thought, is that the best way to say it? Or would it be better if we said, the goal of this proposal is to develop an animal model for lightning injury? I see heads nodding. It makes sense. That second way makes a lot more sense. Because every proposal has a goal. That's nothing new. That's expected. Notice that top-heavy, 4-syllable, big word development, it changed in the revision to a verb, is to develop. So that was a good change already also. And then this animal model for lightning injury, this new and exciting part, gets put in the natural position of emphasis. Do you worry about this when you're in the free writing brainstorming stage? No. right? The idea then is to get it out on paper. This is something you consider when you are editing it to be submitted somewhere or in preparation to get some feedback from your mentors, from your classmates. Do you write every sentence, or do you organize every sentence that you write according to this organization? I would say no, not either. You would probably pay more attention to the important sentences. There's a lot to be said for variety in your sentences, and to, especially I should mention now, variation of the lengths of your sentences. Much better, instead of having 4 medium-length sentences in a row or 4 long sentences in a row, to have a nice short one to start, a longer one, a medium-length one, and another short one. Variation in the lengths of the sentences also keeps readers interested. So you're happy typing away in Microsoft Word, and you notice the green squiggly underline. Oftentimes that's the passive voice, right? I'm here to say that the passive construction is not evil, as you might have been taught. It's perfectly appropriate, and in fact, the whole answer to whether you use the active voice versus the passive voice has everything to do with this. What do you want to put in the more important part of the sentence? You put in the more important part of the sentence, and you decide on the active or passive voice to allow it to fit.